Welcome back to The Short Coat, coming to you from the amazing and intense world of medical school from the students at the University of Iowa, Carver College of Medicine. I'm Dave Etler, and I've got good news, you guys. I have eliminated the need or even any desire for money on the planet. Because of this, we've entered an enlightened period of human existence in which money is no longer the root of evil or a source of stress because it's gone. We now pay for things with a thank you and a smile. You don't believe me.
I thought you were going to say something about Bitcoin or something crazy.
Huzzah! I did it. Unfortunately, Jeff planned this episode before I managed to do that, and we didn't have time to sub in another topic.
My bad.
Yeah, well, so we're going to go ahead and, as planned, and talk about the financial skills, knowledge, strategies that pre-meds, med students, and early career docs would have needed if I hadn't solved this problem. M4, Jeff Goddard is with us.
Happy to be here.
M4, Trent Gilbert is here.
Hi, everybody.
And M2, Luke Geis has a mic too.
How's it going?
And if you thought that was all shortcuts, well, you've bet wrong, because we're joined by Tyler Olson, a financial advisor who works with early career docs. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Thanks for having me, David. Good to meet you all.
So I think what everything in today's show is predicated on is the idea that med school is a sound financial investment, or could be a sound financial investment. And there's a lot of money invested, since the average student will graduate with something like $250,000 in student loan debt, sometimes topping $400,000.
Yeah, so the cost of medical education is going up and up and up and up and up, and everybody knows that, just like all higher education, largely driven by payroll because professors keep wanting to make more money. Very selfish of them to want to feed their families. That's a little tongue-in-cheek. But medical education, to become a doctor, like, we get paid more per hour of training than any other profession in the United States. And I think that that's pretty good. Like, we should be pretty happy about that. I think that the majority of people in the top 10% of income earners in the United States are physicians. We should feel pretty good about that. I mean, we are the upper class in America, and that's because of, literally a century of lobbying and gatekeeping and all that stuff. But for some reason, a lot of people going into medicine feel like, it's just not as good a shake as it used to be. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair critique, but I do think it's a better shake than basically anybody else is getting. And that's kind of the premise of my conversation that I kind of wanted to start today. Tyler, what are your thoughts on all of that? You feel free to push back or agree with me. I love praise, but I'm thick-skinned. I can take it.
I think that financially speaking, it is a good return on investment. I don't think that it will always be that way if things keep going the way they are. I've never been so busy in our work with having to navigate renegotiations and trying to digest updates in compensation models and making sure that a person knows how they're getting compensated going forward because of the transition, especially on the academic side, from higher base salaries to lower base salaries plus incentive bonuses, whether it's relevant to production or even patient satisfaction. And that creates shaky ground. I can tell you that the reason why I started by saying that it is financially a good investment is because if you went to, let's say the average training years is 5 years, just like split it down the middle, and say on average you make 60,000 a year, so that's 300,000, and then you made 300,000 a year as an attending for another 25 years. The average income over the course of that entire 30-year period is about 260,000. And if medical school costs 250, 275, 300, depending on the school, tuition and such, when you talk about return on investment, that's not a bad deal. You're essentially getting approximately anywhere from an 80 to even a 110% return annually on that investment. But I don't think that's the real thing that like is making people talk about this. I think it's because they see what the future looks like in terms of how their compensation is being affected by CMS and by the efforts of administrators of cutting costs, and then autonomy. I think that's actually the biggest one. Like people talk about it because they're like, well, the money's just not as good, but they're losing the autonomy. And when you do that, what might make it feel a little bit better with is if they're getting paid more. But what's happening is they're getting paid less and they're losing autonomy.
Right, I think that's reasonable. You know, a lot of people talk about how, you know, in the 90s, everything was looking up and everybody was loving life because we were on this infinite growth curve trajectory, and everybody loved the fact that we were doing better than we were in the past. And all of a sudden, things started slowing down, and people are grumpy. But the fact is, like, things can't grow forever. But people are complaining because what they have, that their baseline is compared to the past, things were growing, and it seemed like forever. So I wonder if a lot of the frustration that doctors are feeling is that, especially older doctors, they remember a time when yes, they had more autonomy, which is for sure a thing that has changed a lot in the last generation of physicians. But also they remember a time when they were training or when they were starting their careers where growth was fast for the entire economy, and it just isn't that anymore.
I get what you're saying. There is a place for understanding that in order to like in a business model that is intentionally designed to allow each person's role to function to a with greater efficiency, focus, there are costs involved. And I can even use myself as an example. For years, I was a solo advisor and I just did everything. But it got to a point where there were administrative and analysis things that by having to do those things, it made me less efficient. So I made an intentional decision to actually reduce how much I would get paid in order to delegate those things. So the concept of administration is not unwise. I have to constantly be thinking about each of the individuals involved as people. That takes more than just numbers. That takes more than having an MBA. That takes having a degree of understanding and taking time to think about people. And when you're in a business that's really large and it's focused on revenue, that exists less and less. So, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. Like that's just the trend of how it's going. It's just there's a lot of unwise decisions that are uninformed by the reality of what it takes for you all to take care of patients. Let's say that things are starting to like stair step down in terms of revenue. What should a given med student and subsequent trainee and attending do with their own decisions? And that is to be more cautious. Like there can be a concept of that a lot of doctors have that they can, like once they get out of training, the income goes up so much that they can do whatever they want to. Yeah. And that's just not true.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. An average physician earns $275,000 without a working spouse. So that's 4 to 5 times the average American household income. Primary care averaged about $277,000. Surgery specialist, maybe $500,000 to $550,000. So physicians are typically in the top 1% of income earners globally, right? So from that perspective, it sounds like this is all a great investment. You know, you go into school, you graduate with $400,000 in debt. Once you get out, you've got a few years of lean existence as a resident. And then ultimately you're making what a lot of Americans would see as beaucoup bucks, which then allows you, I think, some time to relatively quickly pay off your debt. Yeah.
To you get out of training, rapidly paid off. There are some caveats with like public service loan forgiveness. Mm-hmm. I've been party to many, many examples of success. That is getting a lot of, there's a lot of roadblocks right now to that.
Yeah. But that public service loan forgiveness is like among the things that are political footballs. You're never quite sure. I feel like you're never quite sure whether they're going to be around or not when you need it.
I personally think that all pre-meds and medical students who are on the cusp of deciding what they're going to apply into, they should not be counting on public service loan forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
And I mentioned that specifically to especially to those who have if they're oscillating between a lower paying specialty and a higher one that they equally like. And just beware that if you pay the lower paying specialty, don't lean on the idea of PSLF to convince you that you won't have to pay off your debt. And I know there's a lot of I don't want to step on any toes here. I know it's not just you shouldn't choose your specialty because of the money, but it should be informed by the money. And I know some have gone into even some subspecialty pediatric fellowships that lead them down to lower income, and they're like, well, I'll go for PSLF. And for anyone who's past residency, or even if they're in the middle of residency, I still generally think that PSLF is there and it will stay there, especially as if the administration changes, that'll obviously bode differently. But it's just the earlier you are in your career, the less you should even think about it existing. So if you want to be a pediatrician and you've got $450,000 in student debt, you got to go into it knowing I'm the one that's going to have to pay this off. And if PSLF exists for some reason and you work at a nonprofit, that's great.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't count on it.
I'm a non-traditional, so I had a day job in my 20s, and I worked in investments, specifically a lot of real estate stuff, low-end real estate stuff, warehouses and small apartments and that kind of thing. And if somebody told me that, I was going to, pay this amount of money, say $400,000, and I was only going to get $200,000 for the next 30 years, a year, I would say, heck yeah, let's do that. A 50% ROI is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, interest rates notwithstanding, that is still you just can't find that except for somehow medical education. And I just don't understand that. That's you can't survive off of $200,000 when you have $400,000 in debt. Again, phenomenal ROI for the next 40 years of your life in your working life. So I'm trying to push back on that. I'm trying to convince medical students that you can in fact survive off of that, and that it is still a phenomenal return on investment. But nobody seems to believe me. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of hard to look at it that way when you're, in the hole. What do you think, Luke? Do you sort of feel intellectually, yeah, cool?
I mean, I think,
but emotionally, you're kind of whoa. Fuck.
I don't know exactly how all medical students feel. I think one of the hard things is sometimes it's the people that you look up to, when they say that they're struggling financially. And I'm not sure how many medical students have people that they know that are doctors or whatnot. But when we were kind of thinking about things to talk about for this episode, I saw that there's so much lifestyle creep right now. I think a lot of people don't even realize. I'm very passionate about finance. I try to be a part of every financial episode we do here. And just one of the things when I was working in industry with people, it was families making $150,000 a year that didn't think that they could make it. We aren't making enough money to just make ends meet. Mm-hmm. And I was just you're making 3 times what people are making nationally, how can you not make ends meet right now? And we straight up went through their finances.
Yeah, where are your ends?
Yeah, it was just they both had really expensive cars. They were paying for a house. Just a lot of unnecessary Amazon purchases, like a laptop this month. Last month, it was a PS5. It was just all those things add up. And so I do think from the surface level, logically thinking about it, $200,000 is $200,000 is a great, that 50% ROI you're talking about. That's great. But when is that not enough?
We've got to continue to the next part where we're going to talk more about that stuff.
Oh, sure.
But for now, Shortcuts, if you have something you want to say about today's show, something You want to hear about someday a question you have, go to theshortcut.com/tell us and send us a message. Otherwise, that's our show. Until next time, I'm Dave Etler saying don't let the bastards get you down. Talk to you in 1 week. No, talk to you next time. Say bye. Say bye.
Bye.
What did I say?